Good evening and welcome everyone to the November 15th, 2011 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. There are agendas on both sides of the room, so I would encourage you to pick up a copy and follow along with our meeting tonight. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment both on general items as well as items that we'll be discussing this evening. It is our custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, so at this time I would ask that everyone please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Holden, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Rankin?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner Schnell? Here. Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, which pertains to minutes of prior council meetings. We have one set of minutes to approve tonight, and those are from November 8th, 2011. Are there any changes, comments, corrections, criticisms, or otherwise from any members of the council with respect to those minutes? Hearing none. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. The minutes are approved unanimously. Brings us to item 4 on the agenda. Public comments. These are public comments of a general nature. There will be opportunities to comment on items that are specifically on our agenda tonight, but if anyone has a comment or a question of a general nature with respect to items not appearing on our agenda tonight, I would ask that you please at this time come down to the podium, share with us your name and address, and we would love to hear from you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Frank Falish, 820 Prairie, and commissioners and staff. After our meeting last week, I took a little drive over to Prentice Creek to look over the situation, and I found, looking at those very expensive, unhandsome lighting fixtures, 10 of them were not operating. There's 26 units in total, I believe. So 10 of those units were not operating. Of course, it's true that day was kind of a cloudy day, and I don't know if there was much of a wind, but supposedly these units have wind and solar power. They also have a problem with disposing of the batteries when they go bad. And but the big thing is the cost. They were very expensive, but we got a grant to put them in, and so that made it less expensive. But it still was very bad. And they had a nice write-up in the paper that we were the first ones to use those type of lights. And I might caution the people not to be the first one in anything, because that is a real problem, to be first in something like that. So, and I've got a list here of the where I saw the lights. So I hope going out, if I go there today, I would imagine more of the lights will be on, but it's not too bright to have those lights not working. And that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comment. Obviously, not quite sure what the situation was at that time, but appreciate you bringing it to our attention. I know that there was Commissioner Schnell and I will be mentioning earlier how we were at National League of Cities last week, the Congress of Cities, and in the exhibition hall there was a vendor that was displaying those very types of lights. So I don't know if we were the first here or first where, but they're becoming increasingly popular throughout municipalities in the country. But again, like with anything, obviously you want to be prudent about it, and we had the good fortune of having a grant which made it make sense in that area. We obviously don't have plans right now to install them everywhere throughout the village, but appreciate your comments. I think the only thing you want to be first is the first out of a burning building. That's when you do want to be first, right? Any other questions of a general nature? Hearing none, we will move to item 5. There is no public hearing tonight, so that brings us to our consent agenda. And pursuant to council rules, items E and F on the consent agenda are being moved to the active agenda for separate consideration. So, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments with respect to any items on the consent agenda? Any questions or comments from anyone in the audience with respect to the consent agenda items as amended? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the consent agenda has been approved unanimously. That brings us to our active agenda. We now have 4 items on our active agenda, items 7A and B, and former items 6E and F. We'll take them one at a time. Do I have a motion to approve an estimate of the 2011 aggregate tax levy for the Village of Downers Grove as presented?
Mayor Tully, I move to find and determine that the aggregate tax levy for the Village of Downers Grove as defined in the Illinois Truth and Taxation Law, estimated to be necessary to be raised by taxation for 2011 upon the taxable property in Downers Grove is $22,940,382. This amount is based upon an estimated tax levy of $6,442,486 for corporate and police, $2,850,000 for fire, $1,567,925 for police pension, $2,122,822 for fire pension, $4,140,942 for library operating, $658,220 for the 2003 library debt service, $423,750 for the Central Business District 2005 serious debt service, and $707,970.50 for Fire Station Number 2 2007 series debt service, and $1,153,087.50 for Stormwater 2008A series debt service, $854,775 for Central Business District 2008B series debt service, $1,326,860 for the Central Business District and Fairview Avenue 2009 series debt service, $238,700 for Central Business District 2010 series debt service, and $197,800 for the Central Business District 2010B series debt service. The estimated levy for the Special Service Area Number 2 CBD Special Service Area is $246,446. The estimated levy for the Special Service Area Number 3 Prince Pond Special Service Area is $8,671. A public hearing will be held on these proposed levies on December the 6th, 2011 at 7 p.m. in the Village Council chambers. The adoption of the proposed levies will be held on December the 13th, 2011 at 7 p.m. in the Village Council chambers. Staff is also directed to prepare ordinances to abate said 2011 tax levies.
Second.
Well, thank you. And obviously, Commissioner Schnell drew the short straw having to read that motion, which is always the longest one of the year.
First time.
Questions or comments from members of the council with respect to the 2011 aggregate tax levy? Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. As most people know, I opposed the budget last week, and I stated my reasons at that time. But now we do have a budget, and it has been approved, and we need to get this aggregate tax levy passed in accordance with the budget. So I will be voting in favor of the tax levy. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the council? I'll just point out once again, it's been stated before, and it was actually in the motion, but hard to pick out of that verbiage, that although the proposed levy is estimated to be almost $23 million, there will be tax levy abatements totaling almost $5 million, which means that we will levy up to $23 million, I'm rounding, but about $5 million of that will not be collected due to other sources of revenue. Any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to the tax levy? Hearing none.
Did you vote?
Sorry.
Sorry, Mayor, I should have spoken.
Feel free to throw something.
No, I wanted to just remind everybody that who might read that or have memorized it after Commissioner Schnell read it. There's a lot of debt in there, and that's a subject certainly fairly deliberated and discussed amongst our residents as well as us up here. But I want to remind everybody that debt is tied to real investments in real assets for the village. It's not, you know, in light of certain towns in Pennsylvania or debt ratings of the state or California cities who in the past have filed bankruptcy, this community is making its operating payments out of continuing revenue sources. We're not borrowing to make payroll. We're not borrowing to make our pension payments. We're actually making our pension payments, which a lot of folks aren't. And so it might be a little unnerving to hear that word debt pronounced something like 13 times. But those are investments over the last 20 or 30 years in very real assets to the village, which inure to the benefit of the village and to the continuing improved valuation of our community as a whole. So it's just an important distinction I thought we should make.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Commissioner. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the matter passes unanimously. Do I have a motion to approve, I'm sorry, do I have a motion to continue exploring creation of a potential stormwater utility in the Village of Downers Grove?
Mayor Tully, a motion to direct staff to explore the creation of a stormwater utility by hosting meetings with the public and key stakeholders and prepare a report with final recommendations for Village Council consideration.
Second.
Questions or comments from the council? Commissioner Barnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Newstead, I think, mentioned this last time. I'll just reiterate it again. This is not a commitment to do a stormwater utility, but a commitment to really study it in some more detail. And I know we've got various minutes, but I want to reiterate for our staff some of the things I'm hoping that'll come out of the future study. I've mentioned some of these in the past. I just want to get them into the record now. There's some modeling of, we did and saw some modeling of typical homeowner and a couple of commercial properties. I'd like to see that same kind of modeling done for some of our NFPs, in particular church properties. I'd also like to see it on some of our smaller businesses, like the downtown businesses or the Ogden Avenue folks. They have distinct and unique land situations as compared to some of the other folks we saw modeled. As Commissioner Durkin, I'm sure, would like to remind everybody, we're going to want official, not just kind of anecdotal or hearsay, official input from EDC, Chamber of Commerce, and Downtown Management. Also, the effect, I personally would like to see, if it's not too much trouble, the effect of moving only existing revenues and then creating something like either a 5 or 10-year ramp up to those ideal or necessary levels, as opposed to that first-year switch. So some more stuff for us to consider as we go forward.
Thank you. A lot of things to look at. Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The only item that I would comment on here is that I know it says in the green sheets or the electronic sheets online that we're going to levy the property tax by $1.3 million. In essence, the first year we're going to have a rebate to those that pay on the property tax bill versus the fee will be a savings, if you want to call it that. The monthly rate would be less than that of the tax credit itself. But I just want to point out and make sure that when we educate and we bring this out to the public, that that's really a showing for only the first year, that there are significant increases for years 2 through 10, since this is really a 10-year plan. I just don't want people to think going into this that this is a credit, all the way down the road, when it's not. It's a credit for the first year, but it's going to increase drastically by the time the 10th year rolls around. So it'll be a different picture, just as long as we're clear and as transparent as we possibly can be, is all that I want to make sure we do, as not only as a council, but as staff as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Schnell.
Just a comment and then a question. When we have the meetings for all the stakeholders, we are going to obviously reach out not only to our corporate but to our residents too, and explain to those individuals exactly what it means to them. Since there really are no credits right now for the residential, just a clear explanation, I think, of what it means to them. I know Mr. McCrenn has brought up the issue of sump pump discharge and things like that. Are we going to be looking at that, or is the consultant going to be looking at that? So if people are connected, does that make a difference? You don't have to answer it right now. It's just more of a... And then the last thing, are we going to continue to allow residents to feed questions via the webpage, so that if as they go through the process of attending a meeting or reading information online, if they have questions, they can continue to feed it in to staff and ultimately to the consultant?
Yes, this extensive public engagement process will last at least 90 days or so. We'll feature targeted meetings, open meetings, question and answer period, modeling of all the properties in the Village of Downers Grove, really an extensive exchange of ideas and explanations. So Long answer is yes, we will do all those things.
I think one of the things that both Mayor Tully and I learned or reinforced at the National League of Cities was the fact that the webpage is the number one informational item that residents look to for information. And they like to have it as an interactive tool, and we talked about this before the meeting. So I think it's, especially when it comes to something like this, where people are somewhat confused, they may go to a meeting and then go, okay, I didn't catch X, Y, or Z. I think there needs to be that exchange, or at least a place for that exchange, and obviously many people will go to the website for that. So I think it's good we can continue it.
We'll do.
Thank you. Other questions, Commissioner Rankin?
I would just say that we all had 4 meetings to digest this information and develop questions, so you guys are great at this, but I think that's going to be the challenge, is paring down the information so it's easy to understand and addresses all their questions. But I'm confident you'll do a great job.
Thank you. Well, certainly the process that we're planning on embarking upon is supposed to be two-way. It's, on the one hand, an educational endeavor to explain to all aspects of our community, all stakeholders, what it is that we're contemplating doing and why, and the pros and cons of it versus something else. But then absolutely it's a two-way street where we're supposed to be getting feedback from those same stakeholders in terms of their questions, their concerns, and their suggestions, so that I anticipate that we will have a bucket full of options at the end, and it'll range from everything from storm sub-pump discharge to impact fees to credits to all sorts of different things that we'll then have to determine whether or not those are things that make sense to bolt onto this or not. But we'll have to look at each one of those and figure out whether it makes sense in coming up with what it is that this would actually look like in the detail should it eventually be adopted. Questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Tom LeCren, 545 Chicago Avenue. I want to thank Commissioner Schnell for bringing up some pump issue. I'm not as confident that there's going to be an answer to that. I'd like to know, will that be in the next meeting as council questions? Is that, it seemed to me it was a form of a question, whether or not that's going to be a consideration going forward in determining about this thing. I'd just like to say that even under the consultant's thing, it said the fee was to be based on their contribution to the system. Well, some pump discharge is a humongous contribution to the system, and to ignore it just isn't fair. If you're going to ignore it, then I would suggest that you cancel that code that allows for direct connection, because then all of his residents would be treated equally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LeCran. Other questions or comments from the audience on this item? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Matter passes unanimously, so stay tuned. More to come on this for sure. Next, we'll address the two items that were formerly on the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to authorize agreements with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois with respect to insurance matters?
Mayor Tully, I move to authorize agreements with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois for insurance matters as presented this evening.
Second.
Questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks to our rules, they were on the consent agenda, and I was the one who asked that we remove both E and F, both having to do with Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And it has mainly to do with the fact that I'll address both items at the same time, so we won't belabor the point. But we are contracting for both claims determination or adjusting with the same company that we're doing the stop loss with, and to me it's a subtle incentive to deny or have processes in place to kind of discourage claim payments. And having been a claim adjuster in a former life and dealing with a number of insurance companies now, I just had concerns with this particular company and giving them both sides of the process, both the determination and the possibility of an incentive, because they, as part of it, we're paying for up to a certain amount for the claims, and after that amount, Blue Cross starts paying. And then there's also an aggregate amount that we're paying for insurance. When we reach that point, then Blue Cross winds up having to pay beyond that. And it turns out to me to be somewhat of a conflict, and it's something that I thought should be separated for the good of for our employees. And it's just, you know, they are required to follow the law, they are required to follow the contracts, and I certainly agree with that. But having dealt with a number of insurance companies, including Blue Cross Blue Shield, there are ways that things could be better handled, and talking to medical providers, you know, they know who to do business with, you know, who's easy to do business with. So taking that in consideration, I just had a difficult time offering both sides of the process to the same company. And so I will not be supporting these items. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there questions or comments from members of the council? Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Nay.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The matter passes 6-1. Next, may I have a motion to authorize an agreement with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois for stop-loss coverage?
Mayor Tully, I move to authorize a resolution, I move to adopt a resolution to authorize an agreement with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois for stop-loss coverage as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from members of the council? I assume the earlier comments apply to this one
Correct.
as well? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Nay.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. This matter also passes 6-1. That brings us to the end of our active agenda. Brings us to item 8 on our agenda for this evening, which is our first reading segment, sort of our workshop where items are presented by village staff for discussion by the council and questions or comments from the audience, and they will be voted on at some later point in time. As is customary, I'll turn over this segment of the meeting to Village Manager Dave Fieldman to disperse these items and present them as he sees fit.
There are 5 items on tonight's first reading agenda, but really 3 key issues. And we'll take the first items, A and B, together as they both relate to municipal electrical aggregation. The first is a resolution authorizing the execution of a letter of intent with the Will County Governmental League to participate in an aggregation program. And the second part is a resolution to submit and approve a ballot question regarding the operation of electrical aggregation as an opt-out program. You may recall that we had a representative from one of the retail suppliers of electricity, happened to be a Downers Grove resident, who provided us some extensive background on the electrical aggregation program just a few weeks ago. Since that time, we've been working with the Will County Governmental League on an aggregation program that includes about 20 municipalities, most of them in Will County. Here to present information on this proposal are members of the Will County Governmental League, Hugh O'Hara and Michael Clemens, and they do have a presentation for us tonight. Gentlemen.
Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks for having us. My name is Hugh O'Hara, and this is Mike Clemens. As Dave said, we're with the Will County Governmental League. We're an association of 32 municipalities, obviously in Will County. We're similar to the DuPage mayors and managers, though much smaller in staff. Me and Mike are 2 out of the 3. So.
That's a pretty good ratio, 10-1.
He had to leave one behind.
Bulk of our attention today. So we're not a supplier. We're not in the electric business. I'm going to have Mike present a little bit about municipal aggregation, and then I'll go over real briefly the Governmental League's program.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's essentially a 2-track process that Hugh mentioned. The first part is steps defined by state statute. This is the last part of electrical deregulation that started in the late 90s in Illinois. All other customer classes have been able to negotiate power rates on their own. The last step, in 2009, the governor amended legislation allowing municipalities to purchase power on behalf of their residents and small commercial retail customers. And the idea is to seek lower rates for electrical supply. The process is laid out in state statute and is pretty straightforward, but there are several steps. The statute says that municipalities are allowed to purchase power on behalf of their residents and small commercial retail customers who have not opted out of said program by passing an ordinance that authorizes you to do so. But there are several steps you have to take in order to be able to pass that initial ordinance. You have to submit the question by referendum to the voters. They have to approve it. After the referendum, you have to develop a plan of operation and governance that explains how you will run your program and shapes the RFP that you'll put out for bids. It explains the bid process, what kind of terms of service and rate, length, contract length that you're looking for. You have to hold 2 public hearings on that plan of operation and governance, adopt that plan, and then you're finally authorized to pass that ordinance that authorizes you to purchase power on behalf of your residents and small commercial customers. The referendum question is up on the screen. It's spelled out in statute. That's the language you have to use. Shall the Village of Downers Grove have the authority to arrange for the supply of electricity for its residential and small commercial retail customers who have not opted out of such a program? And we're targeting, with the Governmental Leagues program, the March 20th primary election. After you are authorized to do this, to purchase the power, you would submit an RFP to the 23 licensed electric suppliers in the state. There are about 15 that are active in the residential market. Only rates that come back lower than ComEd's rates would be accepted. You wouldn't want to raise rates. And customers have to be notified in writing that they can opt out of the program before their supplier changes. Those are done, you get a letter, it'll tell you what ComEd's current rate is, what the negotiated rate would be, and explain exactly how they would opt out, how long they have to opt out. Usually they include a card that you can just check the box and mail it back. There's also a toll-free number you can go online to opt out of the program. It's a pretty straightforward process. Key dates: December 18th is the last day to notify the county clerk that you wish to put the referendum on the ballot. January 3rd is the last day to adopt an ordinance placing, resolution placing the referendum question on the ballot. That's all targeting the March 20th primary. So what does this mean for your residents? Very little changes from a residential perspective. We're only talking about the supplier, and that's roughly 60% of your bill, the supply side of your bill. If you think the bill is broken up, 60% supply, 30% is the delivery charge that ComEd charges, and they still deliver the power no matter who's the supplier. Their power is bought by the Illinois Power Authority. Right now it comes from Direct Energy, but it could be any one of the licensed suppliers in the state. They still deliver the power, and that's roughly 30% of your bill, and the last 10% is taxes. So we're talking about the 60%. I mentioned that they still deliver the power. The bill will still come from ComEd. That doesn't change. Only the supplier's name will change. If the lights go out, you still call ComEd. They maintain the distribution system, and any resident can opt out before their supplier changes. And I'll turn it over to Hugh for the Governmental Leagues program.
We were asked in June by our board to look into the idea of not just aggregating individual municipalities, but in aggregating any of our members that would be interested in going together. The idea being that the larger the group we could put together, the better price that we could get. So we created the Will Utility Aggregation Group. You could call it WUAG, but I think it sounds pretty silly. You can see we came up with the name before we did the acronym. So the electrical aggregation process still needs to be followed exactly as it would be if you were going on your own. Each municipality still has to pass the referendum, still hold the 2 public hearings, adopt the ordinance, same as before. The thing that will change is that the operations and governance plan will be developed collectively by this group. So it would be the same across every member of the group. And then additionally, you would need to pass a intergovernmental agreement binding you together is this Will Utility Aggregation Group. That agreement is being developed by the Will County Bar Association's Municipal Government Subcommittee. So it's all the municipal attorneys in Will County are working together on it, so that the idea being that we don't have to go to the 20 towns that have signed off on this and have each one of their lawyers review it multiple times and go back and forth. We met with your attorney the other day, and she'll be a part of that process as well, so that you guys would be included if you join the group. Then we'll take everybody's electrical load, put them all together, and then take them to bid together. Obviously, it's been in the news a lot lately. This is, when we first started this, there was only 1 or 2 towns that had done it. By now, everybody's seen an article on this multiple times. For comparison, if you look at the second column that says rates per kilowatt hour, ComEd's current non-summer rate is 7.7 cents per kilowatt hour. If you were to run an opt-in program, which would essentially be that the village picks a preferred supplier, and then you give the information out to your residents that they could join this program, but they'd have to opt into it, you could get 6.3, 6.2 cents, or the 2 programs that we've looked at recently that do it that way. The opt-out programs are down in the 5.9, 5.7 cents per kilowatt hour. One community just in the last couple of weeks got 5.4 cents per kilowatt hour. So the savings are much more substantial if you go with the opt-out program, because obviously you're bringing that customer base to market at once, whereas if you go opt-in, you're just whoever happens to sign up over a period of time. Currently, we have 20 communities that have signed a letter of intent to join our group. It's about 172,000 households, so it's quite a large group that we'll be taking to load at once. And the potential savings that we believe we can see in this is between 29 and $35 million. That's money that can go back into the communities that won't be going off to your ComEd bill. So in summary, the goal is to save money. Voters need to approve this in a referendum in March. The residents can opt out before anything changes. As Mike said, the new supplier will have to send letters out letting everybody know that they do have an option not to be a part of this if they so choose. And obviously, if the rates aren't lower, they won't be accepted. We'll just stick with ComEd and continue on as if nothing has changed. So any questions, concerns?
Well, first of all, thank you again for coming out, traveling here, taking time out of your busy schedule. I shudder at the thought that there's only one person left to shut the lights off back at the office. So we appreciate you being here and taking the time to go through this with us, because obviously this is an exciting opportunity, and I think some of the earlier presentations or information we've had on it indicates that it's the kind of thing that it's not a question of whether you're going to do it, it's just how and through whom. It obviously results in savings and many different advantages. It's all in the details and how you put it together and who you go with and so on and so forth. So we appreciate this opportunity. I've got some questions and comments, but I'll open it up to my colleagues first if they have questions or comments. Commissioner Barnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think I have many questions. I just wanted to thank a couple people and also make some comments about how beneficial I think it is. First of all, this is a great example of residents and elected officials and our staff working together, not only internally but outside of our own community. We've talked over the last few years about how important thinking of, it's a cliche, but thinking outside the box and looking for new opportunities to work with other folks to try and be more lean, be more efficient, find ways to reduce the cost of operation to our residents. This is a perfect example of that. In particular, there's 2 residents of our community, Rich Spilkey and Dan Loftus, who really got this conversation started. We've all received emails, hard copy mails, notices in IML bulletins, etc., about the subject and just kind of never taken it up. So I really want to thank those 2 Downers Grove residents for starting this discussion for us. But then in particular, you guys and Steve Quigley as well, for being proactive, for being kind of leading edge on it with your group, but also being real receptive to us. It was a month or so ago when you guys took some time out of your day to talk with Allison and I, and that's really, I'm probably overstating it, but I don't know that it can be, if that makes any sense. But that kind of thing, being willing to have those conversations beyond jurisdictional boundaries, is, I think, critical to every municipality in Illinois, every government agency in Illinois. And so I really appreciate you guys being open and receptive and accommodating of us. This is going to be an opportunity to save Village of Downers Grove residents and businesses, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, perhaps $1 million in electric rates. And that is very real and very important to a community who struggles mightily, both residents and the village, to make ends meet. So to everybody involved thus far, thank you. And I remain very optimistic this is going to be a thing that turns out to be really good for us. So thank you all, everybody that's involved so far.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Other questions or comments from the council? Commissioner Newstead.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, well, not obviously, I'm going to be in support of this when we do vote on it. I think it's important to note that there's two very important things, is that there's a referendum question to the residents, so it's posed to the residents in that way. And then, if we do move forward, there's an opt-out provision also for residents that's in the program. So it's something that we can do as an elected body to try and offer something to our residents for savings. We don't get a chance to do that very often, so I appreciate all the hard work, as Bob said, from everybody involved. But the fact that the Governmental League is here in Downers Grove, outside of Will County, I think is an example of how this village has been working lately. You know, with some of the shared and consolidation agreements that we've had here in Downers Grove, it just goes to the point that this council and our staff isn't afraid to, I'm going to say it again, Commissioner, think outside the box, think outside the village boundaries, if you will, to come up with opportunities for the benefit of our residents. So thank you, and I look forward to supporting this in the future.
Thank you. Mayor. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for coming out tonight. I know for our residents, you know, when you get a lot of information coming at you from your village, it sounds very official, very complex. And just going back years ago when you moved into Downers Grove, well, you immediately got your bill from ComEd, you got your bill from Northern Illinois Gas. Oh, good, we get cable. You got it from, I think it was Media One or something back then, and everything was done for you. And now everything's, you know, things have just changed. And now what people need to realize is that you really have choices out there, and how we go about this, we need to be very careful. So when we talked about opt-in, opt-out, if you love ComEd, you could stay with ComEd. You could pick somebody else, but this just kind of sort of means that, you know, when people come into the village, you may have somebody else other than ComEd as your supplier, and hopefully if we do this right, we'll save you the maximum amount of money. And there was a lot of interest generated when we were talking about garbage collection and who we were going to pick and how much the sticker prices were going to be. And this is the same thing, except it's electricity. And, you know, it isn't putting the bag out, you know, once a week. It's every time you flip the light switch and turn on the TV and whatever you do. So it's much more important, and I think staff and with your help in that, we'll be able to get the word out and have everybody, you know, we'll find the best deal we can for our residents, and they're still free to go and choose to what they want to do. And we also should be aware that this is a lot of money we're talking about, and there's going to be a lot of, for lack of a better term, lobbying going on. You know, a lot of conflicting statements, and I think as a council and staff, we're just going to have to slog through all the materials and things that we're going to be getting, and work with you if that passes, and look over the intergovernmental agreements and just do what's best for all of our residents. So let's get the process going. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Durkin.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The only question I have is more for staff. I know last week or 2 weeks ago, we had voted to become members or renew our membership, DuPage Mayors and Managers, which is a COG. Will County's a COG. Is the DuPage Mayors and Managers doing anything that Will County's doing here, or has Will County just beaten them to the start line? Where do we stand with that? Because I'm sure there's some residents either in the audience or at home or who read this in newspapers or posts or wherever they're going to get it, tweets or twits, just so we have some information we can give out tonight on this.
Sure.
We can ask them that tomorrow night at the business meeting.
You may recall that their DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference Executive Director Mark Beloga, when he was addressing this council a few weeks ago, indicated that they had a two-prong approach to electrical aggregation. First was to gather information and distribute it to the municipalities, and they have done so. The second was to gauge interest in an aggregation program, who was doing it, who would be interested in cooperating. I did see the results of a survey that organization had done. They put that out last week. It appears to us that Will County Governmental League is a little more advanced in this. They've already got the program up and running. They have the letter of intent. They've got a draft IGA going. And so staff is recommending that because of where Will County Governmental League is in the process, that we start now and work with them.
Great. Well, I support this. I professionally have an association with the Will County Governmental League, just like I do with DuPage Mayors and Managers and others. So I firmly believe in the staff, knowing them a number of years, and I will be supporting this and commend them for being the first ones out to start this, and hopefully that number of 20 participants now that you have today, hopefully by the time this actually gets rolling and out by March, you'll have hopefully double to 3 times that, because then this is significant savings across the board for everyone.
Thank you. Commissioner Schnell?
Just a comment more. When we start going through this process, there is going to be an educational component for the residents, so they understand, one, what the referendum question really means, but two, what this can mean to them from a savings point of view.
That is correct. There's an educational program that's required and really a key element to this whole referendum process. We would be working with the aggregation group to prepare those materials and get them out to all the Downers Grove residents.
And then the other thing, we talked about this today during our little question and answer period, but for those residents that are out there that are having infrastructure issues with ComEd, the fact that they would opt into a different supplier of electricity has nothing to do with the, I know it doesn't, but it's more for the people out there who are shaking their head. It has nothing to do with the infrastructure nor the ability for us to get ComEd to update our infrastructure. That would still go forward whether or not we would go into a program like this.
That's correct. ComEd does not make or lose money on the supply of electricity. They make and lose money in the delivery of this, in operating the distribution system. And so our choice to a different supplier would have no impact at all on ComEd's.
Okay, or their ability to fix what's wrong with their system.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Rankin?
I just wanted to clarify for residents, I had asked Dave about this. If someone has done this already on their own, they cannot be a part of this until their contract ends with their current supplier. Is that right?
That's a point that'll need to be negotiated in the contract with whichever supplier we ultimately go with. Will they become a member of the program when their current contract runs out, or will they have to wait until the next time that the contract would be renewed? That's something that'll have to be negotiated with the new supplier, and that's something that we'll be looking to the utility aggregation group to direct us on what they want us to negotiate in that contract. Because obviously, the more stipulations you put on there, the price inches its way up. Mm-hmm. So that'll be something that the group will ultimately decide.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just to pick up on Commissioner Rankin's point, this is obviously something that's not new. It may be new in terms of what we're talking about, but the ability to pursue electricity aggregation has been around for a while, and as was just pointed out, there's a number of businesses and organizations and private residences even have already taken advantage of it. What this really is an opportunity to do it on an aggregate basis where you get the economies of scale, basically. You get a better deal because you got more people involved. And one person can get one price, 10 can get another. The entire village of Downers Grove can get a third, and now we're talking about at least 150,000 customers if we go forward with this, or 460,000 residents in Will County and surrounding counties, and we add that. And it's basically aggregating to get a larger and larger pool, and therefore presumably driving a better price because you have more numbers negotiating, and it works out better for both sides. So that's really what this is we're really talking about creating an avenue by which residents can take advantage of a much larger pool to swim in than they would if they were doing it on their own. And here, it would be even a larger pool than if we were simply doing it as the Village of Downers Grove. We'd be doing it as the Village of Downers Grove plus all the participating municipalities through the Will County Governmental League. And as Commissioner Durkin said, the more that join, the better it is. What is the and maybe all this is just negotiation down the road, but what is the contemplated term of the actual contracts with the electrical supplier? I mean, are you contemplating 1, 2, 3-year terms?
Yeah, I think we'll get prices for a 1, 2, and 3-year term. It's been sort of we have a smaller steering committee of our group that's met a few times, and they're sort of directing us in the 1-year term to start, just to kind of get everybody's feet wet, get them comfortable with the process. Additionally, we have 2 communities in Will County that did electrical aggregation on the first round of communities, and their first 2-year contract would end at the same time as if we do a 1-year contract, and they've indicated that they'd have an interest in joining our group at that point, and we'd like to make that available to our members. So we're thinking probably 1 year, but if the group decides for a different term, or if we can negotiate a way to get those communities in, that'll be something that the group will decide. It'll be a 1 community, 1 vote type deal. So.
And what is, and again, I realize this is all in the negotiation, but what is it contemplated in terms of the term of the intergovernmental agreement? I mean, if you sign on with this particular one, what is it being envisioned in terms of the term of it? Because to Commissioner Durkin's point, obviously one of the advantages of doing this is that you can change who your supplier is, you can change which aggregation group you're with. Maybe any ideas as to what the term of the IGA is?
Yeah, the term of at least the first IGA would be the term of the first contract. So you'd be locked in for that time. We feel that it'd be best to let everybody kind of see how the process goes. If they don't like where it went over the course of the first term, then you'd be able to not renew it and either go with a different group, go on your own, whatever you so chose.
Okay. And I think that's important for folks to understand, is that the real key here is getting the referendum question on the ballot and passed, which is pretty open-ended. I mean, it simply said that, shall the Village of Downers Grove have the authority to arrange for the supply of electricity for its residential and small commercial retail customers who have not opted out of such a program? So if you don't want to be in it, you can get out of it, but we at least need to have the referendum authority to participate in that kind of negotiation on behalf of residents, and we can either do that with the Will County Governmental League, we can do it with DuPage mayors and managers should they put together something that's more advantageous. We can work with different suppliers, we could back out all together and work with our own supplier if we wanted to. That's the real beauty of it. And I think that's important to understand, is that there's 2 different issues here. One is whether we want to set the table in order to have this meal, and what actually comes out on the plates is negotiable. And as long as we're not locked into 5-10-year deals, then I really don't see any reason why we wouldn't want to do this. Could really just creating a vehicle by which our residents, as Commissioner Barnett pointed out, can save a significant amount of money on their electricity. So all these other questions I think are key, and they're going to come up in the drafting. But if it sounds to me like in the beginning we're not going to be talking about more than a couple of years terms, then no one's really locked into anything. I mean, if you see how it goes, and if there are other opportunities, no offense to present company, but if there are other opportunities that become more attractive, we have the option of pursuing those as well.
Absolutely. We've really stressed that point with even our membership, that we're trying to put as many opportunities for the communities to opt out of this program if they don't like the direction that it's going, so that nobody's locked into it. Mike, real quick, was mentioning when it comes to these bids, the way that they work is they're generally only good for 12 to 24 hours. And it's something that will be in the intergovernmental agreement where your village in that intergovernmental agreement will appoint someone to accept or reject those bids, or vote to accept or reject those bids on your behalf when they come in on that day, because obviously you wouldn't have time to convene a board meeting and sit there and negotiate, because it's a group negotiation where you're at there. So it'd be one person from each community voting to accept or reject those bids.
And that's a process we've used for bond issuance. It's called a parameters ordinance, so we've done that before.
Right, that's nothing new. And that's the other thing worth noting, is there's an awful lot of competition in this field. I think someone mentioned getting barraged with emails. I think there's at least a dozen, if not more, organizations that have reached out and contacted us recently about wanting to be the electrical supplier. The advantage here, of course, is going through an even larger group than we could if we were simply on our own. But there's a lot of different options out there. Going back to the to the, setting the table analogy about getting the referendum question, Commissioner Schnell is absolutely right. I mean, that really is the key, is getting that passed, and then it allows all the options to take place. So my main concern is making sure that when the election day comes around, the primary comes around, that residents actually know that this is a good thing, because you could read it, and it sounds like you're giving power to the government, and I could see people saying absolutely not, and they're not really understanding what it's all for. So it's not just a public education component in terms of holding a couple public meetings. I mean, like with any referendum, if you don't get out there and promote it and advertise it, there's a risk that folks would shoot themselves in the foot and not realize that this is actually creating them, creating an opportunity for them with no out-of-pocket cost and no obligation. I mean, it's almost too good to be true. But that's what I'm afraid of, is that if we don't get the referendum passed, then all these accolades are for naught.
Well, that's one of the great benefits of this proposed partnership, is now that we would have 20 or more communities working together, getting a scale economy on the preparation of the materials, the distribution of the materials, and we really could, stretch our effort, do things that we couldn't do alone as a staff in working partnership with the league.
And are there any issues with the village's ability to actually actively promote this referendum? I mean, I recall there being issues about that in the past, so that's really my question, is there has to be some external source that is advocating for the passage of the referendum within the community, because I could just see through lack of information or knowledge it being voted, not passing, and no one would realize what it was that they just voted down.
Right.
And that would be a shame.
That's why ENDS is on the group that's going to draft the agreement, to make sure we meet those parameters as well.
Okay, perfect.
Mayor.
And then just one last thing, and I'll turn it back, because it's a workshop, so we can bounce around. It bears repeating that this has absolutely, positively nothing to do with reliability of electrical service. Zero. This only has to do with the cost. So this isn't any kind of panacea for the issues that we've been dealing with respect to the actual juice coming through the pipe. Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, real quick, just in line with what we had just spoken about with DuPage mayors and managers, is there any other interest, or would other COGs be invited or available to join you with what you're presenting to us today? So instead of having DuPage mayors and managers recreate what you've done, you've got a rolling 20 people or 20 communities, Southwest Conference of Mayors, Northwest Conference, I mean, there's so many of them, to just join in on you, to get on the bandwagon. Is that something that's available?
It's something that we would need to go back to our board. At some level, it becomes, do we get too big?
Okay.
We don't think we're anywhere near that point, but it's something that our board would need to talk about and give us some direction on how large do they want to be.
So the real timeline here for us is really just to do this because of the deadline for the referendum question.
Right, that's the key.
That's the key.
That's correct, because as Hugh was saying, there are several points in this process where the village could say, okay, we've learned more and this is not for us, and we can withdraw without penalty.
Yeah, I mean, the key is getting the referendum passed. All the rest of this doesn't mean a thing if we don't get that passed, because there's all kinds of options available to us, but we got to get this on the ballot. And I haven't heard one good reason why not to put this referendum on the ballot. Who we work with, what we choose, details, terms, all that can be worked out later, but none of that happens unless we get this passed.
Outside of the 20, how many, and outside of us now being 21 possibly, how many other communities are entertaining this and be able to meet the deadline of December?
There's at least half a dozen others that we
So really we could have 25 by the time we would join her up to 30.
I think 25 is probably about where we'll be. Just because of the deadlines.
Okay.
As you guys know, November, December, tough to get board meetings together. A lot of towns cancel one or two. The deadline to have the ordinance put on the ballot is January 3rd. So it's really more of a time issue at this point.
Downers Grove, we're always open for business.
So even though we're talking about a utility here and it pertains to Commonwealth Edison, is there any movement that you guys know or staff know of possibly doing this for natural gas or any of the other utilities that are out there? Or is it just electrical thing that it seems that everybody has gotten on the bandwagon of?
The municipalities don't have the authority right now to aggregate natural gas. The market's a little more, honestly, the prices are just a little bit better in natural gas right now, so there's not a ton of savings to be had there, but there's no right now, I don't believe municipalities have the authority to do natural gas this way.
Okay.
Individuals can, but municipalities can't aggregate.
Okay. Well, that's the last of my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members of the council? Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to electrical aggregation? We might be able to negotiate in sub-pump discharge.
No. That's enough. Noted.
Logan, Mr.
Tom
LeGrand.
LeGrand, 545 Chicago Avenue. I just have a couple points of clarification for me, perhaps. As I understand it, the referendum is going to be in March, but we have to sign the intergovernmental agreement in February before we're authorized.
Well, we could make that conditional. There's all kinds of clauses that lawyers can put into contracts that it's all conditional upon passage of the referendum. I'm sure we'll put in something like that.
Okay, this is what it says here. And the other thing is, what are the real fees to the user, to us as users, going to be? I know it mentions down here $250 per household per year, but is that true?
That's a very good question. I'm glad you asked that because I said no out-of-pocket costs. As I understand it, and a lot of this, well, as I understand it, that $250 comes out more, I mean, for lack of a better word, correct me if I'm wrong, it comes out of the savings.
That's correct. The fee is to cover the cost of the energy consultant that we're using.
Right, I understand.
It will be included in the new rate. The rates that are in the other communities that have done an opt-out program, they all include a consultant or broker's fee in there. And it works out, it's a per usage-based fee per kilowatt hour. And the fee we're talking about, the rate would capture per household $2.50.
And if we like somebody else who does $2 or $1.50, you know, that's the beauty of it, is we can go with somebody else. But as I understand it, the important part to understand is that it's taken out of the delta of the savings. So it's not as though there's some additional charge. Right now, you're already paying too much. So you'll be paying less.
I understand, but you're still paying a fee.
All those rates.
You're already paying it.
All those rates have the broker fee.
Included.
Yeah. I mean, that's
not the
how it
rate
works.
that you're getting from the supplier. That's the rate you're charging us, the customer, which includes the fee, correct? I mean, let's call a spade a spade. We're paying this fee. What needs to be done? I mean, we're going to pay the consultant, but
Well, but
don't obfuscate it by saying it's included in your savings.
I understand what you're saying, but it comes out of a pool of money that wouldn't exist but for the program.
So instead of saving
Apples and-
$150 a year, you're going to save $148 a year.
Well, right.
Precisely.
But I mean, you wouldn't be saving anything if we don't do this.
True. I understand that, but it's still a fee and you're still paying it, so people need to know that. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Part of the dollars that you're already paying would be allocated elsewhere.
The first part of this question was about the intergovernmental agreement. We anticipate putting it out to all the communities before the end of this year for review, and we would include language in there that if the referendum doesn't pass, you wouldn't be included.
Right.
And there would be a drop dead date that the village could exit out of the intergovernmental agreement before you're locked in.
Right. And more importantly, if someone has an issue with whatever fee is negotiated, they can opt out of the program altogether. So there's no obligation to do anything. I mean, can't beat that.
Mayor, follow up on Tom for a minute.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, Laura, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want to follow up on Mr. LeCrun's comment. That speaks to two things. One, the reality of the situation, which I think everybody here gets, but it also speaks to the importance of, to your point, Mayor, the process between now and referendum day. Because you could see how
Absolutely, yeah.
that could turn into some ridiculous blogosphere fiasco of misinformation. And it's going to be pretty critical that we work with a team of 20 or 30 other communities who are all helping craft that message and figure out exactly how to lay that stuff out there, because that's exactly the kind of thing that could get ridiculous if it wasn't handled well.
Well, and to pick up on that, I think the key to getting the referendum passed is to focus on the benefits of the authority and not the details of what some contract might be. Because someone will get tied up in a $2 fee and misunderstand it, and then that'll be the end of it. And then they'll end up, they're not even giving themselves the opportunity to save money, and that would be a shame. So I've said that again, and I'll keep saying it. That's the most important part. Ms. Crawford.
Thank you.
Good to see you. How are you tonight?
Always good to see you. Laura Crawford, Downers Grove Area Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I want to congratulate staff as well as council for thinking out of the box. That was a challenge that the mayor had for all of us when he was elected, and I appreciate that you are taking a lot of different items under consideration. You may or may not know the Chamber has a similar program that we are offering businesses. The company that we're working with is the same, Direct Energy, and the rate is the same, just as an FYI. I have two questions tonight. I don't know that you'll be able to answer either, but I think it's some questions that you should be considering. The first one, after a year of trying to determine what a core service that this village was going to be providing its residents, do you consider this a core service? I don't expect an answer to that, but I think it's something for you to consider, especially as maybe a year from now, and I know Direct Energy also offers the aggregation for natural gas. Where does it end? Deregulation being regulated, kind of. It's just kind of funny, actually. My number two question would be, I know from the Chamber's program that through aggregation, we are paid a commission. We are very open and clear about that. Considering what this village is going through, I would be very interested in knowing whether Will County Intergovernmental League will be benefiting, or will it be the village of Downers Grove? And if so, will there be a percentage rebated back to the consumers? So I don't think either one of those questions can be answered right now, but I just want to put them forth to you for consideration.
Those are very good questions, and all those will have to be addressed in the intergovernmental agreement and the contract with the supplier. You betcha.
We can't answer some part of that question. And we don't know who our supplier is going to be, so it's,
right now it's direct.
It's not. We don't. No, they're ComEd supplier. We don't have a supplier that we've chosen. That's when we go to market, we'll choose a supplier then. The governmental league, in terms of any fee to us, our members have asked us, in terms of a fee, to not collect any fee from our members. So in terms of our membership, we'll be getting nothing. They did ask that we put on a fee that would be commensurate to what your dues would be if you were a member of the governmental league to any community that is not a member of the governmental league. In Downers Grove's case, your population works out to about $20,000 in dues to the governmental league. They've asked that we put a fee on to collect roughly that amount from Downers Grove. We have no intention of going above that. It works out to 1/10,000 of a cent, I think, on a kilowatt hour basis. So it's simply a way for us to recoup the costs that our other members are already paying.
And that prompted staff in the preliminary discussions with this, with Hugh and Michael, to start talking about, well, if we're going to pay it through some kind of rate or fee through the aggregation, perhaps we should look at also becoming a member. It's a different way to look at it, so we may have information about that when we bring the intergovernmental agreement forward.
Okay.
But again, I think for what we're looking at as far as the referendum, we need to focus on whether or not residents want to pass that first. The rest of this stuff can be negotiated later.
This is all an academic discussion if the referendum isn't passed.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
And so maybe it's a good time to reiterate what the actual resolutions are for consideration under the council tonight. First is a resolution authorizing just a letter of intent to continue working with the Will County Governmental League. And again, there are multiple opportunities to withdraw from the program without penalty. The second one is the more important one, which is the resolution authorizing submittal of a ballot question regarding the operation of electricity aggregation program as an opt-out program. So we're looking for both, we recommend both, but really item B is the more important one.
And I agree with Bob. It's going to be very easy to get bogged down in all of these numbers and things out there that we may or may not use, because if the referendum passes, it's conceivable the village will decide to do it. We could conceivably do it on our own. So I mean, I think it's very important that people understand that and understand really what it is that we're asking in the referendum, and whether or not that saving that much in electric costs is important to them. So,
Yeah, that is critical, and again, it bears repeating that we don't want to get the cart before the horse and get bogged down into the terms and concerns and objections about what the intergovernmental agreement might be and what supplier we might be dealing with, because all of that is a completely academic conversation if we don't get the referendum passed.
Right.
And if we pass a referendum, we still don't have to do anything. It just gives us the authority to do it. No, that's my concern. These are all valid questions. I don't want to suggest that none of them are valid, but yes, we will take those up when the time comes, but there's nothing to take up and discuss until the referendum is in place. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you. Maybe a different way of approaching it is that each and every resident will have an opportunity to vote twice. The first time is on the referenda, and if they accept that, they can still vote again as to whether they want to be in it or not. So if they don't like the arrangements, if they think that there's something going on, they always can vote the second time and go with their own supplier. So they're really voting twice, and they just open up all kinds of possibilities to their benefit if they help us pass the referenda, and then they still have the option of opting out. So that's their second vote. So different approach to it. That's all. Thanks.
That's a good way of putting it. Any other questions from the audience? Mr. Falish. These are all good points. Don't get me wrong. We're keeping track of them. They're all good points.
Frank Falish, 820 Prairie. Yeah, I'm wondering what's going to happen when one of these companies goes bankrupt, because I don't understand how they can compete and not run into trouble.
I mean, again, that's something that can be dealt with in the contracts. But go ahead.
If one of the companies did, let's say the supplier that we chose did fail and was no longer able to supply power, ComEd is the provider of last resort in the state of Illinois, in this area of Illinois. They're mandated to provide you with service. You would switch back to ComEd and you would pay their current rate. They don't penalize you if you go back, so you would just be paying the same rate that everybody else is paying who's not a part of the program. And if that were the case, we've been directed that ideally what we would do then is rebid the contract and go with somebody else and continue to try and save money.
Good, thank you.
Other questions or comments on this item from the audience? Okay, gentlemen, thank you once again for your time and for coming out. Nice to have you here in Downers Grove.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
The next item on tonight's first reading agenda is consideration of an ordinance amending the water rates. These are the rates that are before you tonight in your materials that were presented at the November 1st budget discussion. They do include the DuPage Water Commission rate increase that we talked about. That does include the City of Chicago water rate increase that was passed on to the DuPage Water Commission. These rates would become effective January 1st. And again, we've been talking about this issue for really a couple of years and in earnest on these specifics for the last 2 weeks. This is the same information we've been discussing over those last few months and particularly the last 2 weeks. We're happy to answer any remaining questions that you may have.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Talking about electricity, water, all kinds of things tonight. Questions or comments on this item from any members of the audience? Thank you.
And now for something completely different.
Yeah, just one point of clarification, and I apologize for the delay. I know one of the questions I keep getting, and I know I've asked this to the manager, with the proposed increases in the water rates, that will not have an effect or impact on the sanitary sewer, correct?
That is correct. The sanitary district is a separate government, and they base their fees on volume of water used, not what we charge for the use of water. And so nothing will change because of this on that separate governmental district.
So it's based on the volume?
That is correct.
Number of gallons, not the price?
That is correct.
All right. I just want to make sure that's really clear because I got asked the questions, as a matter of fact, yesterday morning about that again. So I just want to point that out.
We encourage residents who have questions.
The tweeters and the Twitters out there catch it and make sure that that's appropriately tweeted. So
we should tweet the Downers Grove Sanitary District website. They have a great explanation of their rates, which I looked up when Commissioner Durkin asked me about this, and it's very clear, so we would encourage people to check Downers Grove Sanitary District website for that information.
Can we link it to ours?
Already is. will do.
I know, but make it prevalent, you know,
Yes.
prominent so people can find it.
Any questions or comments? Now you've had a chance to think about it. Any questions or comments from the audience?
And finally tonight,
Thank you.
items D and E both have to do with an amendment to our zoning ordinance and proposed special use for donation collection boxes, a petition filed by the Salvation Army for their property on 75th Street. And to provide additional information on these two items that we will consider collectively is our Community Development Director, Tom Dabriner.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. These are two items, both having to do with text amendment in the property at 1520 75th Street. Ordinance has been prepared amending Chapter 28 of the zoning ordinance, Section 28.606, the B2 District Special Uses list. And secondly, an ordinance has been prepared issuing a special use for an exterior donation collection facility for the business at 1520 75th Street. The second depends on the first, just for purposes of clarification. Staff is, right at the outset, I want to point out the staff is recommending denial of the text amendment as well as special use. We believe that they are not consistent with the goals of the B2 zoning district and the standards listed in Section 28.1900, which are the standards for granting special use. Approval of the text amendment and the special use would negatively impact the appearance of the property in question, and the request is not consistent with the village's current regulations, which the council, in fact, had directed staff to enforce village-wide in 2010. I'll touch on that a little bit more in a moment. The text amendment itself would allow exterior donation collection facilities in the form of a vehicle, of a truck. It would allow it as a special use under these conditions. If it's ancillary to a second-hand store, specifically a second-hand store, if the operator is also a 501c3 organization, not-for-profit organization, and then the vehicles must be relatively small, not semi-truck trailer type vehicles, but 24 feet or less. They would be staffed and then not operated outside of the store's normal operating hours, and then within 150 feet of the store entrance. That is the text amendment proposal. Staff has a number of concerns that I want to raise. First of all, donation boxes are not allowed today. The boxes, in fact, became nuisances with time because the donated items tended to accumulate outside of the boxes, and it became unsightly. It started to detract from the attractiveness of the various shopping centers where these tended to be located. And in fact, by 2010, donation boxes had proliferated to such an extent that council had asked for tougher enforcement, and in fact, it took 4 months to really cover the village and achieve a reasonable level of enforcement. These boxes still pop up today every once in a while. In fact, there's one in the shopping center where the Salvation Army is located. It is not associated with the Salvation Army. I do want to make that clear. We are enforcing on that box today and have been for a little while now, trying to achieve compliance and try to get it off the site. So it continues to be an issue. If you go to that box today, there is stuff outside of it. We are concerned about that. We're concerned that parking spaces under the proposal will fill up with stuff while waiting for the truck to arrive the next morning. We really see no substantial difference between a donation box and a donation truck. It's almost a donation box on wheels, and we think that it really presents all of the same concerns that the village has expressed concern with before. With regard to the organization that brought this to us, Salvation Army, located at 1520 75th Street, approximately there in the, where the arrow shows, just off of 75th. Here's Lamont, and there's 75th. Here's an aerial showing the location highlighted in yellow. If you've been out to the site in the last year or so, you may recall that there were donation boxes shown, situated about there. We do have a photograph of them that we'll show you. There were other things that you may have noticed as well. For example, a Salvation Army truck located in about that position. What is being proposed, there is also service at the rear of the center, and we'll point that out too in another set of photographs. What is being proposed is a truck location in that vicinity shown here. That is about the usable 150 foot distance from the door. So it certainly is located closer to the business itself. This was a picture from I believe the summer of the donation boxes as they existed. They are no longer there. Really, we could have taken the picture almost any day of the week. Things tended to collect outside of the boxes. They did pick it up, so it was always different things every day, but things tended to collect outside the boxes. That was the truck that was parked out there during the summer, and I think earlier in the fall it occasionally appeared. That's the shopping center. You'll see in this area that's the Salvation Army thrift shop. Here, the area, I just wanted to highlight the 150 foot line from the entrance, and that is approximately there. Kind of jogs down the parking aisle there. But from this point forward, closer to the store, is the 150 foot area. Significant amount of parking in that area. A couple things that came to mind, and this is a little bit hard to read. I know everybody loves it when somebody stands here and says, I know you can't see this, but what it says is, please bring donations back door of the store. And so the Salvation Army already recognizes that this is a legitimate option. This is a very real option. If you do that, let them know that you're back there. They will greet you and give you a receipt for the whatever it is that you're donating. That's the back door. There is signage there, and we can zoom in a little bit. It says, please bring donations during store hours. Store hours are on the front of the store. We're glad that it says dumping is illegal. We really don't want to encourage people just dropping things off. Neither does the Salvation Army, and as evidenced by the sign. But also importantly, it indicates right there, if I circle it, that that in fact home pickup is available, and it gives a phone number that you can call, so that you do not even need to bring the materials to the shopping center. So they are providing a number of different options. Part of our concern really is how this might ultimately develop elsewhere, the kinds of problems that other communities have. This is a semi-truck, but there's a hut really for the person who's staying in the area. There are also donation boxes. We are concerned overall about the attractiveness of this, and obviously this wouldn't look exactly like this, but things tend to evolve over time. We're concerned about the potential there. This is another example in a nearby community with 2 semi-trailers as it became more and more popular. The Plan Commission considered 2 versions of an exterior donation collection facility zoning amendment, one at their June 6th meeting and one at their September 12th meeting. The first amendment sought that traditional donation box that I showed you, and to allow that. That was withdrawn. That text amendment was withdrawn and replaced with the amendment to allow a truck as a donation collection facility. There was quite a bit of discussion on this, and ultimately the Plan Commission recommended approval of the text amendment with the truck as the exterior donation collection facility by a vote of 5 to 4. The 4 dissenting votes expressed concern that the proposed donation collection facility was not desirable, that there were other options for collecting donations, and I pointed out some of those tonight. However, the Plan Commission then went on to approve unanimously the special use should the text amendment pass, so the same evening. So they found that it met the standards of 28.1900, conditioned upon passing the text amendment. So it's keep the sequence in mind. Again, staff is recommending denial of the text amendment. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Major Manzella of the Salvation Army and their attorney, Mitch Malamed, are both here to answer questions as well.
Thank you, Mr. DeBreiner. Questions or comments from the council on this item? Commissioner Rankin?
Have they indicated what the issue is of the trouble they're having accepting the donations in their store? Like all other resale shops probably accept their donations in the store. Why are they trying to do it this way?
Well, they can answer. They do accept in the store, but they accept at the rear of the store. And the sign that I pointed out is in the front entryway to head that off.
Okay.
Commissioner Durkin?
So if I get this right, the big question is, or the concern is that they're not allowed to bring a truck or a semi-trailer there for donations as the Walmart in Darien has on their property, which I believe is one of the pictures you showed.
Correct.
That's the issue.
They're not allowed a traditional donation box, nor are they allowed currently to have a truck sit out in the parking lot to collect donations. The truck can be, obviously there is truck service to and from the rear, the loading dock in the rear, but it's not there to collect donations directly.
See, I see the side where staff sat on this, but I also see the need for this service, because my family and a lot of people I know utilize, and everybody knows you go to Darien or you go to the Kmart on 83 in Plainfield to make the donations. So I have a problem with this. I think it really comes down, in my opinion, the way I read this and what I hear, it's more of a cosmetic thing. Do we really want to have this big ugly truck sitting in their parking lot collecting stuff? Is really how I see this. And with the economy the way it is and the impacts and so on and so forth, there's so many people of need. And I know this goes back to what Commissioner Waldeck was talking about earlier with the budgets and so on and so forth. But where in Downers Grove is something like this with what the Salvation is trying to do acceptable? Where can they go? Have we directed them and said this is an area that you can go? Because I was on a board of a nonprofit that accepts donations, and they have it at their door. But they're in the Ellsworth Park. So, I mean, I have a problem with this, and I don't really know where I'm going with this one. So I don't know if there's any information that we can answer. Where can they go? If they're not allowed on 75th and Lamont Road, where can we, do we have an alternative spot that we could work with the Salvation Army
They
for?
can still go there, they just can't put it outside.
Yeah,
Put
they
it in
just
the
have
back
to
door.
go to the back door.
Not being banned from the community.
But they can't put the trailer there. So if you're gonna bring them couches and stuff like that,
Those
they
are
pick 'em
actually not authorized items anyway.
Yeah.
Exterior donation boxes and similar collection facilities are prohibited throughout the village of Downers Grove, but donations can be accepted in most zoning districts. Secondhand stores are permitted in certain zoning districts. So there are alternatives under our code to do the actual act of collecting donations. It's just the physical exterior donation box or truck that is prohibited.
And if you're donating to a truck or you're donating out in the back door of this facility, it's the same thing, in essence.
okay.
Commissioner Schnell?
The bottom line to me is that we directed staff to clean up a district because we were getting complaints from residents throughout the community about the way our community looked with all of these collection boxes and the fact they were being abused, they were being put places where they should never have been put. Staff spent 4 months or more cleaning up a district because as a council, we directed you to do that. We directed you to enforce the code that sits there. I understand that the Salvation Army is a great charity, and that a lot of their work comes from their resale shops. I don't think there's a particular hardship that we're imposing on them simply because there is the ability to make donations in the back of the store. At the Savers on Butterfield, again, you make donations. I haven't been there, but some members of my family have. You make donations, at the store. So, they don't have a collection box, because it's not allowed in our code. The bottom line is, from my perspective, we either wasted 4 months of staff's time because we told you to enforce an ordinance, or we really, as a council, meant it. That people told us that the town looked bad, that we wanted this enforced, and that we wanted the capability of people being able to donate, but they could donate in another way. They didn't have to dump it in a box, and they don't have to dump it in a truck. They bring it to the facility, or they call and say, would you please pick up the donations I have? So, I understand that it's important. I understand we're in a very bad economy. I understand all those things, but the bottom line is that we have a certain code that we as a council asked you to enforce. And I think if there was no way that people could drop something off, except perhaps in a collection box or in a truck, then that would be one thing. But they have the ability to drop it off, just as they do in other salvation places throughout Illinois. So I am 100% in favor of staff recommendation of denying this, because I think it would set a precedent that just is not what our community has told us we want. As far as they want things enforced, and they don't want these boxes, and they don't want overflows, and they don't want all the problems associated with that.
Commissioner Barnett?
On its surface, I guess I agree with everything Commissioner Schnell just said. I'm not sure that I understand the problem. The request is for a truck, not a box, correct? Mm-hmm. And the associated commentary was that truck was only going to be operating during business hours, correct? Mm-hmm. And the problem we've had in the past that we're all trying to figure out how do we avoid, and I suspect the Salvation Army is trying to figure out how to avoid it too, because they've got signs, is we don't want piles of stuff. So but isn't that sort of what the purpose, I know it's not, because the stickers all say that, but isn't that why the truck and the physical presence in the parking lot? Otherwise you could just you could dump by the back door too. The hours of operation that the truck might be of value to somebody to drop are exactly the same as the hours of operation in the store, where they already can, to Commissioner Schnell's point, make their donations. The truck seems to me like it doesn't add anything but sort of a target for people who are spinning out to drop stuff off hours, unless I'm missing something.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor, I think one of the one of the other issues is that, from what I understand, the Salvation Army did a good job of picking up their stuff. I don't think we've had any specific complaints, to my knowledge anyway, about that. But at the end of Prince and Ogden not too long ago, at a vacant property, there were collection boxes that had piles and piles of stuff, some probably worthwhile stuff, some probably garbage, that ended up turning into a line of sight issue for vehicles on Ogden. That was happening around the village. And I think what this item is getting at is similar to what Commissioner Schnell said. It is cosmetic to some extent, because we saw that happening around our village. Commissioner Durkin's right. There are organizations in town that do take donations. Sharing Connection is one of them. I think that's what you were referring to. They have a backdoor, kind of a garage situation. You ring a bell, somebody comes and checks your items and takes them. That's allowed. That is permitted and encouraged in our village. The problem that I have is that if we start letting these creep in around town, we're going to start seeing semi-trucks all over the place and collection boxes back, and we just said we don't want them, and really they aren't permitted in the first place. So I think we need to be real careful with how we set this up, and if we allow it for one, are we going to allow it for all? So I'm still going to hear from as many people as I can on this issue before we vote, but I think that we just need to be real cautious, because we did ask staff to enforce this. It wasn't all that long ago that we went around, and from what I understand, it was a big endeavor. They actually get those boxes moved out of the village took considerable amount of time and enforcement. So I'm all for the donations. I understand, and I think the Salvation Army is a great organization. They do so many great things, but they do accept donations. I think part of the problem might be is the off-hour folk, you know, the person that comes at 10 o'clock at night that wants to donate something, it gets left out. You know, is it really something that should be left out overnight? Maybe it gets rained on, maybe it's not, you know, something that should be outside. Then is it worthwhile anyway, or is it garbage? I would think that you would want to kind of control that a little bit more, but I'm not in that business, so not positive. I'll look for more information before we make our decision on this one.
I guess just a point of clarification, I'm not in support of those drop boxes, but I wouldn't have a problem with a truck there for business hours. I don't like those drop boxes, and I'm glad, Tom, you brought that up about the one that's sitting over there, because I saw that the other day and I was going to ask you about that. And there was trash everywhere. And it's fly dumpers. You know, people that don't want to pay for the garbage, they bring it over. I'm sure that's what that is, but maybe somebody put some good clothes out there as well. I don't no idea, but a truck during operating hours, I don't have a problem with that.
Well, let's start with the premise that is indisputable, and that is that, you know, clearly, through the Salvation Army, the donation of clothing, furniture, and household items help them continue their promise of doing the most good in the lives of others. And according to their website, more than 10 million caring citizens donate such items every year, and those dollars are turned into great programs, part of their adult rehabilitation center, and many people support this program. I'm sure there are a lot of people in this room that do it, and we do it various ways, either by calling or get a phone call and the truck comes by, or we take it to the locations during hours. So there's no question that this is a venture that is worthy of support. In fact, a lot of people do support it, and by any indication, the fact that there are 2,300 donation drop-off locations in North America indicates that a lot of people do support it in various different ways. But that's kind of the concern I have, is there are various different ways of supporting the venture and supporting the cause and helping Salvation Army continue its promise. And there are limitations already on the program that are acknowledged by the organization, that you can't do everything, and there are different requirements and regulations in different communities that vary from what it is that you can drop off and where you can drop it off, and so on and so forth. So, you know, having those kind of reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions, if you will, are not uncommon. I kind of come at this from a more of a sort of a strict zoning ordinance approach, and that is, number one, I think it needs to be understood that this is not currently allowed. Can't do it. I mean, we're not talking about a special use request yet, because we'd have to have a text amendment that allowed the petitioner to actually request a special use, if I'm understanding it correctly. And that's kind of where I have a real problem, is creating a text amendment, because I think that's something that, as a general rule, we should do very, very cautiously, because a text amendment is akin to opening a door, putting a hole in a wall. And I don't mean to mean that in any disrespect to this petitioner, but it does open a door. You know, if this was a situation where there was already a special use path that was allowed, and we were looking at whether this special use complied with our code, that might be one thing, although even there I have some issues. My concern is that, you know, number one, creating a text amendment opens a door, opens a window, and it is true that there are other things that happen. There are always unintended consequences to that, so we should tread lightly in that respect. And the standards for a text amendment, I think, give us a great deal of discretion. When it comes to whether this is consistent with our code and whether it is consistent with another very important document that we just adopted after a lot of work on October 4th, 2011, which is our comprehensive plan, candidly, I don't see this request as being consistent with either one of those documents. I'm not convinced as I sit here that it is consistent with what's described as our goals for this community that was adopted after a great deal of effort and in some respects angst, specifically on pages 48 and 49 of our comprehensive plan. And we adopted this plan for a reason, and that was to provide us guidance. And I'm turning to it right now as guidance, and I don't see this request as consistent with the plan, number one. Number two, even absent the plan, I don't think it's consistent with section 28.1902B of our zoning ordinance. And it's not even a question in my mind, because there was a prior decision before I was here that this was inconsistent with our code. So it really comes down to an issue of it's not allowed, it's not consistent, and with all due respect, it's not necessary, because there are other reasonable mechanisms by which the same result can be achieved. And it is a very worthwhile result that I have supported in the past, and I'm sure many people in this room have supported in this past, and will continue to do so. So with those things said, I find it difficult to get over those obstacles, both from a procedural and a substantive standpoint. But again, we have a few weeks before we have to vote on this, so there's opportunities for further discussion, and obviously that'll begin here tonight with, I'm sure there'll be further comments on this issue before we conclude our discussions. Any other comments from the council at this point? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Waldeck, yes, of course.
Thank you, Mayor. No, you caught me just my put my hand up. This being a workshop, I appreciate the comments of my fellow council members, and Mayor Tully does bring up the fact that we'd be adding a text amendment. It seems very, very specific text amendment. I know that in the past I've had problems, mostly with the liquor ordinances, about such specificity. Try it anyway. And that does give me some concern. I guess on the other hand, just for workshop purposes, what would we expect to see if this text amendment doesn't go through? What's going to happen to the business? Will people be dropping stuff off in the parking lot or over at the door? You know, just to make sure that by, you know, if this happened to fail, what would the consequences be of that? And also, secondly, knowing the difficulty in getting into the rear of the shopping center, it's not a route that most people take. Is there anything that we would need to do signage-wise to direct people to make it convenient to get the results that the petitioner really would want as far as taking donations in the back door?
We could get those questions asked and answered for you by the time this comes up for further consideration in a couple weeks.
Very good, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, well, we're still in the workshop mode, so there's more opportunities for questions, but I'll open it up to questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item. Sure, anyone would like to speak, please come to the podium, give us your name and address, and we'd welcome hearing from you.
My name is Mitch Malamed. I am on the advisory board of the Salvation Army, having been, I think, on an advisory board for at least 20 years at this point, maybe 25. I also serve as an attorney for the Salvation Army, one of many for various purposes. I also sat for 8 years as a village trustee in another community, so I am very aware of all of the issues that you have raised tonight. I feel I'm now at somewhat of a disadvantage because I've heard a number of negative comments with conclusions, and yet I haven't even begun to explain some of the issues that have come about and the answers to those questions, which I'd like to do now. This particular location, the Salvation Army is a tenant. The lease was signed effective November 1, 2008, and is a 5-year lease until 2013. For the first 3 years, the Salvation Army had 3 donation boxes at this location with the permission of this community. In fact, when this particular special use was requested, Mr. O'Brien suggested that the Salvation apply for a temporary special use, which was immediately granted. They were the exception. They continued to be the exception until, I think, 2 months or less ago, when they were asked to remove them, which they did the same day. The reason for the request for a text amendment is to specifically address what you each have raised in your comments before. And I would like to read from your section 28.1902 dealing with the standards for approval of special uses. And it specifically says that the proposed use at that particular location requested is desirable to provide a service which is in the best interest of the public convenience and will contribute to the general welfare of the neighborhood or community. That's what we should be looking at today.
Although in all fairness, we have to read the next paragraph as well.
Oh, I could go on. There are actually 3 more paragraphs,
Just 4.
yes. And it's such will not, under the circumstances, particular case, be detrimental to the health. I haven't heard one word about health being detrimental to health. Safety, there's been no comment about safety. In fact, just so we're clear again, while these boxes existed, the village of Downers Grove never had a negative comment about them. Not once. Mr. O'Brien confirmed that with me. And he actually said that to the zoning commission. The morals, I don't think the impact of those boxes impact morals, or the general welfare of persons residing. There's no residence there at all. This is a large shopping center. The only residence happens to be in the back of this particular shopping center, where if items were dropped off, could have a negative impact on the residents in back, or working in the vicinity or injurious to property values. I don't, again, think this is injurious to property values because it's a shopping center. In fact, it's a significantly large one, or improvements in the vicinity. So I'm not sure the second paragraph, which you alluded to, Mr. Mayor, has a negative impact either. We talked through initially what would be the best situation for the Salvation Army to continue in this vein. And again, it was, at that point, a text amendment which was introduced specifically addressing collection boxes and designing a text amendment to address a 501c3 donation boxes. When I checked with Mr. O'Brien, I believe his comment was there was not one other collection box in this community that were 501c3. They were all for-profits. So we looked at that, but as Mr. O'Brien suggested, is collection boxes just don't look nice. They're not attractive. I have not seen one yet in my life that looks nice. And so we took that message back and looked at it very carefully. And I spoke with Major Manzella, who will be here to answer a lot of questions, I hope, and said, what else, what other items, well, how else does the Salvation Army approach this issue? And the other issue is not a semi-truck. It is not a semi. It's a 24-foot or less truck. It moves every evening. One of them he'll show pictures of has an awning. It's manned every minute of those hours so that people don't drop things off and leave them. Donation boxes, clearly, and that's the problem that arose. They were not only overstuffed, but people dropped things off. So we tried to look at something that would fit the needs of the community and yet address your overall goal as it relates to donation boxes. There have been a number of comments tonight about other opportunities, other ways to address this. When we looked at the location, if you look at the location, the front entrance to this particular location is quite small. It's not your typical sizable front entranceway. And in fact, the two sides of it, the two pieces of it, are slightly indented. Our initial discussions with the village, where maybe we can be able to set them back in there, and that can't happen either. Bringing them in the front door, we discussed. We discussed it again with the village at the time. The front entranceway is a fire, no parking. You're not allowed to park in front. You're not allowed to stop and drop off things there. It also would be very much of an encumbrance on the people that are shopping in that particular location. We clearly considered the back. And if people are familiar, if we drive around, though, you'll find that the back is quite far away from the front entrance. It isn't next to it. You drive along, you drive around the side, you drive around the back, where numerous truck docks are located. Yes, there's a sign handwritten, which is obviously very poorly done, to ask people to please drop them off in the back because they didn't want to clutter the front entranceway, but they don't get collections in the back. I'll let Major Manzella speak to the differences of donations since the boxes have been removed in loss of income. I don't know if the village is familiar, but in last year, the Salvation Army at this particular location contributed to the state of Illinois $250,000 in sales tax. Part of it went to this village. Salvation Army can't continue to lose money at this location. What they do with these items, so you have some indication of how the process takes place, they are collected, they are brought to the back, they are sorted, tagged, put in out for sale, or taken away from the premises. They are self-sufficient. And again, the money, the income generated from these donations go right to the programs. They support, I believe at this particular location, 20 employees. 20 employees work there, and most of them are people from the community. So we tried to design, again, with the cooperation of the village, and interestingly, and I think this bears mention, there was a significant amount of discussion as it relates to the vote for a text amendment. But it passed. It did pass. And all of the items that you all mentioned today, all were raised at that discussion. I would like to address very briefly the text amendment. It's designed to impact and allow 501c3s only. Charitable organizations. I think there may be 2 others close by other communities have. Goodwill is clearly one of them. I don't believe the American Red Cross has a donation center that I'm cognizant of, but it would be another typical situation. The vehicle can't be longer than 24 feet in length. That's not a semi. In fact, that's a little truck. It's probably, 9 feet longer than a car? This has to be staffed during hours. It must be removed. It has to be within 150 feet. That was a very important piece. The location actually was very important from the zoning commission's discussion. They had to have it very close by so that it would be monitored. The exterior may only operate when the secondhand store is open. I don't believe that we can be worried about a proliferation of this type of situation in Downers Grove or anywhere else for that matter, because those organizations, that specific, don't exist unless someone is going to create them. I'd like to read something that I find interesting also. In the zoning ordinance, it says secondhand stores are permitted uses provided the use is conducted entirely within the enclosed building. I believe used car sales are secondhand, used. I also believe they're not all inside buildings. We accept them, rightfully so, and we should. We're dealing with a different problem. It's not the second-hand or used stores. We're dealing with, as we've talked about, keeping places clean and safe for that matter. There was a discussion or some comments. I'd like to address some of the comments that were made earlier that I noted. The appearance will negatively impact the community. That was a comment made in the introductory comments today. I don't know where that comes from or what the negative impact is from an appearance perspective. It's a conclusion without any factual basis. There were pictures shown of trucks that were semis. We're not discussing that. There were pictures shown of collection boxes. We're not discussing those. So let's not use something that's not on point. I'd rather discuss what we're discussing, what we're trying to accomplish here, and certainly questions germane to that are fine. There is, in fact, I believe even to this day, an accepted donation box by the village dealing with used glasses. It was raised, in fact, at by three or four of the people on the commission. Said, well, wait, aren't there other donation? Isn't there someone that collects glasses in the community? We let that happen, and it's still happening. I would probably beg the question of, and of how many people would be interested in driving around to the back of this particular location at 8:30 at night without lights and make their donations. I don't think it's realistic. I think if there's anything, it'd probably be fearful. So not only is distance in question, not only is the landlord, the lessor, does not allow signage to lead anybody around the back. The signage is very specific in the lease. But there's a concern about how many people are going to be very anxious to drive. I certainly don't think I'd be very interested in driving around the back and ringing a buzzer at 8 o'clock at night. Certainly not when it's dark at this time of year. I guess I was disappointed that staff was against this, because all the comments that came from staff when we discussed it was a fear factor of possible growth of this. If we have a text amendment, it opens it up to everybody. And again, I only want to address the fact it doesn't open it up to everybody. That's why the text amendment was drafted in a very specific fashion. And is it good for the community? For a not-for-profit? Yeah, it sure is. Do people from this community go there and shop? Yes, they do. It is something that we see, unfortunately, in this economy. It's going to continue. But the problem that we have is the Salvation Army can't continue in this way. Again, Major Manzella can answer the loss of revenue already being seen, the loss of donations already being seen. And yes, in my community, your community, there is a sign that says, call for a pickup. I don't need the sign. I know I can call for a pickup. Probably most of us know we can call for a pickup. But in reality, the complaint that all these other donation boxes are stuffed, the reality is people take things to those donation boxes, not couches, not refrigerators. They can't fit them in their car. That's when they get those pickups. But from a day-to-day perspective, people, in fact, do donate very valuable goods that the Salvation Army turns around, uses, and makes available to the people of your community, people of my community, and people from even outside my community who need it. So, again, I don't know the harm of this, the specific text amendment that addresses the issue. Clearly, the Commission felt unanimously, well, if the text amendment's going to pass, there's no question about the way that it was designed, the special use, they all unanimously passed. That was easy, because they said if that text amendment were passed by the village, that would make a lot of sense. I think there's, again, some misleading information on the, and I know we all received this, when it said that the residents expressed concerns about this. I want you to bear in mind that there were 3 residents. Now, I see this in my community. When there's a problem, as a village board, we get in my much smaller community, used to have 100 people standing. 3 people came and said, oh, they don't think it's a good idea, and 1 came and did say that it was. That's not reflected in this either, by the way. So I think I have answered most of your concerns. I hope so. But certainly I would suggest that I'd let Major Manzella address the remaining questions. He's been in this Salvation Army for I don't know how long at this point. Wait, how many? So he's pretty familiar with this, and he not only runs or is in charge of this location, but a number of other adult rehabilitation centers. He has the experience of donation boxes. He has the experience of these, what I'm going to call donation vehicles, for lack of better terminology, and the business aspects of it. So I thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi. I have been a Salvation Army officer for 33 years. My responsibilities right now is I am the administrator of the Salvation Army Adult Rehabilitation Center just outside of Chicago. It's a 200-bed facility, drug and alcohol treatment for women and for men. our sole source of funding is our stores. And so we have some 14 stores that I'm responsible for all around the Chicago Avenue, Rand Road, Arlington Heights, the Norridge area, Downers Grove, just a variety of different places. And I'm responsible for all those stores. Within each of those stores, the situation is different. It's unique. There are some places that still allow, mostly in Chicago, the drop boxes. There are others where drop boxes are not allowed and the truck is permitted. There are other locations where the store is suitable for driving around the back, and we've been able to accommodate that. When we get to the Downers Grove store, driving around the back just doesn't work. When it came up that this is what we needed to do and we needed to start to move in that direction, we started to try to educate our customers, and a very quick sign was put on the door and on the back. I can tell you that the amount of donations received out of the back of that store is next to zero. Folks do not want to drive all the way around, and I brought some pictures to show you so you can get a little better idea of what you have to go through in order to be able to get back there. And it just didn't work. One of the questions that came up was, well, what's the difference between dropping off at the front door and dropping off in a truck? Let me back up just a minute. When we get to drop boxes, I agree with you. The drop boxes were not manned all the time. Folks did whatever they wanted to do, and we're moving away from drop boxes. The thing that the other villages seem to like is the truck. And the reason for that is it's manned. The difference between dropping it off at the door and having a truck in the parking lot is that visibility. When folks ride by, they see the truck, and that automatically tells them that that's a place that they can donate. It's become our image, it's become our mark, if you will. Without that, folks just keep on going. Not everyone that shops in our stores, not everyone who donates is also a customer in our stores. And what happens is they get familiar with having a truck in a particular location, and all of a sudden they'll go, you know what, I got 3 bags of clothes and I can get rid of that on the way to work. And they'll pull up, they'll get rid of it right away. They don't want to make a phone call, they don't want to stay home, wait for a pickup truck to arrive, and they get rid of it right away and keep on going, and maybe not even go into the store. And so that mark, that visibility, that image is gone. There's no drop boxes, which we completely understand. There's no truck. And by the time you get all the way under that passageway in the front and discover you have to bring your donations all the way around the back, it's not happening. The biggest single thing that concerns me the most is we've started to track store sales. Our stores are completely and totally dependent upon the donations we get. If we don't have it to sell, sales go down. And I want to pass a sheet around to you. It's kind of self-explanatory. When we were first asked to remove the boxes, the Downers Grove store was showing an 8% increase in sales. I can tell you as of this morning, we are now down 12%. The donations are just not coming in. That visibility, that mark for us is gone. Folks are not driving around the back. They're not even really bringing it in the front door. In the beginning, we tried to supplement the store with donations from other areas, and then those stores started to hurt because they weren't getting the adequate number of donations. And this store is in free fall right now. This is not trying to over-dramatize this or anything like that at all, but the reality is this store is going nowhere quickly. Someone asked, what is the outcome of this meeting? What happens if we cannot get this, this truck put out front? I have to tell you very honestly that I can't continue to run a store into the red. My good friend here was wrong. We don't employ 20 employees, we employ 35. Those 35 people will lose their job. I don't know if we'll try to get out of the lease early and go somewhere else, or if we'll ride out the lease. That decision hasn't been made yet. But we cannot operate a store without donations. And it's not trying to pressure anybody into anything. You're going to do what you think you need to do. But from our standpoint, we're in a very, very serious point. With regard to the truck, the other villages like the truck because it is manned. There's a picture of two guys at the end of that thing in the Salvation Army uniforms. There's somebody out there all the time to make sure that nobody throws nothing on the ground, to make sure that everything is put to the back of the truck, and make sure that thing is taken away at the end of the day. It's a very clean operation. And we do it in some very nice villages without complaints or concerns. I guess I want an opportunity to be able to show you that we can do this thing right. That we're not messing around, that we're not trying to just come up with some argument to get it done, but that we can do a good job, that we can look good out there. We don't want to cause the village any hardship. We don't want you all to be concerned that we're out there and we're not doing what we're supposed to do. We want to be good neighbors, and we want to continue to be able to operate and do business in Downers Grove. I guess my argument, I'd be glad to take your questions.
Thank you, Major. Are there any questions of the petitioner, as long as we have you there, Commissioner Rankin?
I have a question for staff. Could we allow a loading zone in front and they could have their men out there helping people unload their items? Or is that against the code?
That's against the current striping of the fire lane in the front, but that's something we could get you some information on.
Commissioner Schnell?
I'm actually familiar with the Salvation store in Lake Zurich, and it's at least from my perspective, it's in a shopping center. It's a very similar kind of situation, and they actually do exactly what Commissioner Rankin asked for. Because my daughter lives up there, and we go and donate stuff, and you drive up. There's somebody that comes out from the store, helps you with your donations, brings it in, gives you your receipt, and leaves. And you're in and out in probably 4 minutes max. And the most that I've ever seen is probably 2 or 3 cars backed up. But it seems to work very well. And it is a very busy shopping center in that there's a Walmart there, Super Walmart. And so from my perspective, if we're trying to facilitate this, as I said, I'm not crazy about the truck, but if we could somehow look at perhaps providing drop-off in the front that again would be manned or demarked just for the Salvation Army, that might be a way of helping to increase donations without going the truck route or a drop-box route. So if we could look at that and perhaps look at how a city or a village of Lake Zurich does something like that within the confines of a very similar situation, I think that might be helpful to all of us.
Other questions? Commissioner Barnett.
What kinds of things, if any, have you tried or has been said? What kind of interaction with Kimco has gone on? You know, some of the things strike me as it seems like they need to be involved in this discussion and to trying to find a way to solve something. I would bear with this group. As you heard, we had a couple of years of real concerted effort at cleanup. And while certainly the Salvation Army truck in these photographs is way different than a drop box, that's the way, as you well know, governments work. They swing one way and they swing the other way as they try and deal with things. But some of these things about, obviously loading zones are certainly in our purvey, but rear lights and access and whether or not, what exactly the front versus the door is configured as. Is Kimco involved at all? Are they interested in being helpful? Are they trying to do anything?
I'm not sure who you're making reference to.
Didn't you refer to that as the real, or somebody, maybe Tom or somebody referred to that as the realtor?
No, the realtor here is Robin Realty.
I'm sorry, okay. Well, the landlord, let's use that term.
I apologize.
Okay. Have they been involved at all? Are they trying to be helpful? Do they not care? Any thoughts on that?
You can ask from a lawyer's perspective. I would suggest to you that they are not the most cooperative landlord I've ever experienced, and I'm trying to couch that very carefully in my comments.
Well, the core reason I ask is because you got 7 people that would like to try and find a way to be helpful to a charitable organization or community. At the same time, we reacted over not that long ago to what were some real bad situations. So we're trying to figure out how to bridge that gap.
And I appreciate, even from a signage perspective, as an attorney for real estate matters, shopping centers have very specific signage, because if one entity can take advantage to the absence of the others, it's utter chaos. They can't draft their regulations to say, well, okay, yeah, you can have 5 signs, or you can have signs pointing around to the back of the shopping center, but no one else can do that. I think you might run into the same with the fire. I don't know about the loading zone issue. I can tell you, and Major can address this, because he was, the Salvation Army moves their leaders from place to place. So he's in charge of another location in Chicago, and we talk about waiting to unload, if you will, Clybourne Avenue in Chicago on Saturdays. For those who are familiar with the street, it is completely blocked with people waiting just to unload. Not only to get into the premises, but the street itself is blocked. It's a problem. Each place is unique, as the Major suggested. Also, I didn't make mention of it, I think I just want to bring legally to your attention. This particular specific text amendment is a sunset provision. It means they're gone, it's over. So it doesn't carry on. I think it's an important factor from a legal perspective. And I'd even go a step further and say, if it doesn't work, the village believes there's something inherently dangerous in this, I would recommend that you put some provision, if you would like, in there to say, if they're not doing their job, this special use is gone.
Where would the truck go at night?
Back to the shop.
Which is where?
Back to Chicago.
Oh, back to the facility.
Get it off the
Chicago.
property completely.
Okay. I have one other question, I think. We, just as a matter of trying to make sure we're on the same page, wouldn't Sharing Connections be considered a similar operation, 501c3, accepting donations on site?
Yes, in those terms, yes.
Okay. Okay, that's all I've got for the moment, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we had Ms. Earl and Mr. Casa.
Hi, Marge Earl, 4720 Florence Avenue. You've heard from the Salvation Army staff, Salvation Army's lawyers. Maybe what you haven't heard is my perspective. I'm a frequent contributor to Salvation Army. When the truck was there, I did use the truck. That's how I knew it was there, that not the Salvation Army, but that the truck was there. I was actually the one who did bring the truck to staff's pointed out to staff when they were in front of the village asking for the boxes to be legalized. I asked why they needed the boxes when the truck was there, and I brought that up at the Plan Commission meeting. And staff looked into that and realized that that truck was there illegally as it was. So that was 2 problems then. Since then, I watched the boxes collect junk. I watched the truck pick stuff up and drive it off, who knows where, but they would leave. But it was a big fat giant sign, which we don't allow under our sign ordinance, but it was just a big fat giant sign for
Crossed my mind too.
For Salvation Army. After both of these were gone, I've donated since more than once. The first time, I dragged everything to the front door of the store to find a tiny little sign that said to take it around to the back. Now, that really, if they were really honest about it, they should make that sign bigger and say, we accept donations at the back. If you're shopping here, great. Donations could, in the window, it could say that without having to drag everything up there. It also, I did bring it around to the back. It wasn't a problem. And it just seems though, I actually have been in the store as well, if the store's sales are dropping, maybe they should look at cleaning up the interior of the store, because honestly, I've been at several Salvation Army stores, and this one isn't the most well-kept store. it seemed to be when the boxes were outside, that was the same problem. So I don't know if it's a problem with this store. I don't know if it's a problem, I haven't seen that with all Salvation Army stores, though I have seen it with all the boxes. So I don't know if I can honestly say that I think that their lack of being able to accept donations has got anything to do with them maybe not trying as hard as they could to get people directed to the back and have that transition time that people learn that that's where you take the donations. I have been back there at 5:30 at night. The sign said we only take donations till 5, which was fine if you don't want to take them into the evening hours. But if they're willing to man the truck later in the evening, why wouldn't they be willing to man the back door? So without, well, I won't back into the boxes, but there were significant problems with those boxes being there. I think we all know that. I don't know how many times I tripped over stuff going to the bank when I was on my way to the banquet hall that had blown over or gotten shoved over by snowplows. So that is an issue, but I have a hard time believing that the only cause for the drop in sales at this store is solely because they can't get donations in the back. The store is stuffed full of stuff, and I wonder if maybe the problem is that lies somewhere inside the store as opposed to other reasons. So I don't know why we would, if we have the sign ordinance that specifically prohibits the parking of large trucks with portable signs and other businesses, why we would allow it for this. This may not, they may be a 501c3, but that doesn't give them the right to get exclusions that any other business would be getting, or any other church or anybody else. Would we be able to have trucks in church parking lots if this were the case? Manned trucks in church parking lots on a regular basis? It starts to open the door to all kinds of other problems that I'm seeing. So just a few things to consider, but honestly, it hasn't stopped me from donating. I was there last Friday, and I'll be going back again this week because I've got more stuff in the car. So that I don't see that that's not a deterrent for me to drive around the back, and I don't see that it would be for anybody else. So thank you.
We appreciate your comments, and I'm sure your donations are appreciated as well, and I'm sure that you will be chivalrous, Mr. Casa. Always.
Hi, my name is Janine Murphy, and I live at 5643 Hillcrest. And sir, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Mitchell.
Hi, it's nice to talk with you and have you present some comments. The reason why I'm late for this meeting tonight is specifically because we drove around the backside of Salvation Army, my husband and I. I go there quite often, actually. I have 2 small kids. I can't easily get them from the car in the front into the store. I always go to the back. Tonight, it was well lit. There's nothing to fear by going back there. I've done it twice in 2 weeks. And so when you mention that residents might be fearful, I'm curious to know exactly why you believe that's true. Because for me, by myself, with my kids or my husband, it is such a convenience for me to drop around the back, and I'm a grateful resident of having Salvation Army here. But why do you believe it's fearful?
They don't get donations there. This is the best reason.
Okay, we're a family that is so happy to provide donations, and I always go in the back. So I look forward to continuing donating to this particular Salvation Army. I'm thankful for your comments, but I do want you to know that this is a resident who appreciates it and makes great use of that back parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Mr. Casa.
I just want to follow up to Commissioner Barnett's comment about the landlord. On a regular basis, I talk to the property manager and the leasing agent for Kimco that owns the center. I'd be happy to try to put them in touch with you. I know they're a national firm. I know they would be interested in keeping a tenant and keeping their shopping center looking as attractive as possible. So maybe there's some things that they could suggest or things that they could do, but I'd be happy to put the petitioner in touch with them or the staff. They're good people. I think they'd be willing to help.
Any other questions from the audience? I think I have to make one more observation, which no one needs to agree with one way or the other, but actually the more I've heard now, the more it sounds to me like this may be an instance of trying to blow a candle out with a stick of dynamite. We have had other instances where we have tried to find alternate ways rather than revising our zoning ordinance to accommodate a need of a business in our town, regardless of what its status is in the tax code. And I would really encourage that line of thought, because a lot of this sounds like it's driven by the location, the leasehold, and the landlord. And I don't know if that's a good reason for a text amendment. I think there may be far less intrusive and far more dramatic ways to facilitate your mission. And obviously we're open to doing that. But I would just throw that out as an observation, something to think about as we go forward here. Because a lot of this sounds like it's driven by the particular space that you've leased, and not some unique topographical issue that needs to be addressed with a text amendment or hardship in the use of the property. That just creates even more issues in my mind. But it also opens up doors to possible alternative solutions, and we do want to facilitate. Any other comments or questions from anyone else with respect to this item? And thank you for your input. Obviously, regardless of what the perceptions might be, we haven't decided. We won't vote for a while, and so I'm confident that everyone will think about what's been said from all perspectives before making a decision. So thank you for being here tonight and, at this hour. I think that brings us to the end of our active agenda. Or, I'm sorry, the first reading. I forgot where we were at already. Item 8. That brings us to item 9. The mayor's report. One item I will address in the mayor's report tonight is the continuing item of the ComEd reliability report. Very briefly tonight, I will report that village staff will be meeting with ComEd representative next week to make sure that they continue to adhere to the work plan that they've laid out and that we have discussed with them, that ComEd makes sure they've responded to all the customers that have contacted the village with a question or concern. And I understand that there are some who are still out there that would like a further audience with ComEd, and we will in fact follow up because I think sometimes when they talk about person or resident, that means both individuals as well as businesses. And I know there are some businesses that still have an interest in meeting with ComEd representatives with respect to their concerns and needs that are from a slightly different perspective perhaps. So that's all I have at this point in time. I know that obviously with the winter coming in, the kind of work that ComEd might be doing out in the field is going to diminish, but just because it's diminished, we have not let this issue go. We will continue to have it on our agenda and report out material developments as they are available. That's all I had. That brings it to item 10, manager's report.
2 items tonight, Mayor. One is posted on the agenda, and that is information regarding amendments to our administrative regulation regarding user fees. You may recall that in the last couple of years, we've been putting together a user fee schedule that allows staff in the village to update fees on a regular basis. That regulation was put in place last year and is administered by the staff. The approved FY12 budget and the long-range financial plan recommended and called for about 3% increases overall in the user fees. That is reflected in the revised fee schedule. That information is posted, and if anybody in the public or on the council has any questions or comments, please let me know. Those will be in effect on January 1st, 2012. The second item is informational also related to the General Assembly. You may recall in the budget that when we presented it, we did identify one major risk to our budget, and that is that the General Assembly might, in response to their own financial concerns, reduce the amount of revenue that runs through the state and is provided to the municipalities. That indeed occurred last week. The General Assembly did approve a change in a law which reduces the amount of personal property replacement tax revenues that are distributed to municipalities. That we expect the governor to sign that into law in the coming weeks. This act would reduce the village's share of that revenue by an approximate $80,000 in 2012.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad you reported out on that, because this is one of the items that we wrote to our representatives. In fact, I think we wrote to every member of the General Assembly asking them to oppose this. And I was glad and heartened to hear that a number of our most direct representatives did in fact vote against it, but nevertheless the measure passed in both the House and the Senate. And the consequence of it, assuming that it's signed by Governor Quinn, will be a further erosion in municipal revenues. And this is one of the things that we just need to be watchful for and mindful of for two reasons. Number one, we may pass a budget, and we may know what think our dollars are, but Springfield can gather in their mysterious ways. Next thing you know, our budget has now been, now a hole has been created in our budget. So it's still an unstable environment, unfortunately. And second of all, it requires us to continue to be vigilant in keeping our eyes open for these type of things and speaking out when we can. Because I am afraid that this is, well, it may not seem all that much. This week it's $80,000, next week it's $800,000, and as long as Springfield thinks they can continue to balance their budget and their headaches in the back of municipalities, we're going to continue to have this struggle, and it's not a pleasant one. So I'll get off my soapbox now.
That concludes our report tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Village Attorney's report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 3 items to present this evening. The first is an ordinance amending special use provisions to allow donation collection boxes. The second is an ordinance authorizing a special use for 1520 75th Street to permit collection drop boxes. And finally, an ordinance amending the rates charged for water. That is all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. That brings us to item 12, council member reports and new business. Commissioner Newstead.
Thank you, Mayor. A nice report today for me. I want to thank Mrs. Swallow's 3rd grade class over at Fairmount School. They made some awesome ornaments for our holiday tree. There's a gingerbread house, gingerbread man, and a gingerbread girl, I think. So we've got about 20 of these guys to put up on the holiday tree. I had a very nice visit with them yesterday, and I told them all about the Village Council, which was not as interesting as the new and improved Gingerbread Festival in downtown Downers Grove. Speaking of the Gingerbread Festival, it starts next Friday, after Thanksgiving on Friday, November 25th. At 3:45, there will be a great story time over at the library for kids and families alike. At 4:15, the group will proceed in a parade over to the holiday tree at the Main Street train station. They'll be accompanied by the Downers Grove North Marching Band, which will be a lot of fun. The holiday tree will be lit around 4:45 with a countdown from the mayor and hopefully the rest of the village council. After we light the tree, the new and very, very unique item for this year's Gingerbread Festival will be the Painting with Lights Spectacular on the train depot. I think there's 100,000 lights on the train depot that will be turned on to music, I think every 15 minutes or half hour, something like that. It's supposed to be really great. After that, residents are welcome to shop and dine in downtown Downers Grove and throughout the village and take part in all the other Gingerbread Festival activities, including the WXRT Gingerbread Man Search, carriage rides, visit with Santa, gingerbread house contests, and plenty more activities to happen right here in downtown Downers Grove. Lots more information can be found at downtowndg.org. And Mayor, since we won't be meeting again until December, I'd like to wish everyone here a very happy Thanksgiving. A happy Thanksgiving to our staff and our residents out there. Please enjoy a very restful and safe holiday. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rankin.
No report, Mayor.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy Thanksgiving, safe Thanksgiving to everybody. Commissioner Newstead brought up the tree lighting ceremony and some of the events. To bring it down, the budget last year, we had a good experience in our sales tax, and that helped our budget immensely. So with Christmas shopping coming up, and all the holiday shopping, if you manage to do all your shopping in Downers Grove, we have a lot of new stores, a lot of great opportunities, great downtown. Do your shopping in town, and you'll also be doing yourself a favor as well in the long run. So enjoy the shopping opportunities at Downers Grove. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Barnett.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of comments, if you'll indulge me. In your sales tax, or not sales tax rather, but your state contribution change and the unpredictability of that sort of underscores this for me. You know, they're going to meet again 29th, I think. They're going back. And they're looking for, you know, anywhere from another 85 to 150 or so that's likely got to come out of somebody's pocket. And that's a shame. But what it does is to me, it underscores the need for this body and for every local entity to really look beyond themselves and look beyond the ways of the past as they try and find solutions to problems down the road. Some may recall that last fall, I started to try and initiate a discussion about our HSC, our Community Grants Commission, and how those groups might be utilized differently. That conversation didn't go as far as I'd hoped, not probably for a lack of interest, but to use the mayor's term, for competing interests. Whether they're snowstorms, rainstorms, tornadoes, electric aggregation, water utilities, stormwater utilities, infrastructure, comprehensive planning, budgets, this group spends a lot of time, and our staff spends a lot of time every day working on a list that is seemingly endless. I think we've done a decent job of juggling those priorities over the last year. But as you said, Mayor, those subjects are real and those needs are not going away. And I think it's important that we don't lose sight, that we do not lose sight of that. I ran for this job, in an effort to serve and an effort to bring personal experiences to the council, a motivation I'm sure everybody up here and those before us shares. It's certainly not a career, it's certainly not an income. I think we're all on the right page of that. And while we come at things differently, it's important that we keep coming at them. Commissioner Newstadt's been working on some related subjects, and I hope to hear some more about those in the not too distant future, and I hope we all carefully consider and try and push for his work to go forward. I certainly will. I think he's putting some honest effort into finding, again, some very unique possible solutions to challenges that face us, because we don't have enough money. You keep hearing me say it over and over again, there's $3 billion worth of stuff that we've punted to the next time we meet sort of after the budget, and we're going to continue to have very real challenges about funding. But I also appreciate the mayor's reintroduction of some of those HSC-related topics into our dialogue. And to me, it's important that going forward we remain open to new ideas and solutions. We've seen many times from this dais, whether it's economic challenges that came on us like a tsunami, or it's tonight's aggregation, or it's counseling and social services, or it's the WIP investment we made, when this group sort of lets themselves loose from the binds of how we did it before or what transpired in the past, you got 7 people up here working really hard to try and find good solutions for our community, and we've come up with a lot of them, frankly, and our staff too. And so I'm hopeful that we'll start in, after this budget is done, with a fresh piece of paper and take some real stabs at some of those ongoing, nagging problems that are out there that need solving and that need our effort. I'm heartened by the renewed interest in our community's social needs, and I remain convinced, as I was last fall, that we can and should do more than we're doing. So after this budget's done and after our Thanksgiving holiday, I'm looking forward to getting back into it. I appreciate your leadership in helping restart some of those conversations.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Durkin.
I have no report.
Commissioner Schnell.
I would just like to take the opportunity to congratulate the Bennett Academy girls volleyball team, which won state this past weekend. Even though Bennett happens to be in Lyle, there are many Downers Grove residents that attend the school, and there are Downers Grove residents that were on the volleyball team that are very happy recipients of a state medal, and I know of all the hard work that goes into our state championship. So again, just congratulations to them. It is a major accomplishment, and they should be very proud of themselves.
Thank you. I have a number of things to go through very quickly because I realize it is coming upon 9:30 at night. Number one, I just want to thank Mr. Leiser's second grade class over at Leicester School. They were nice enough to host me today for a breakfast and book session where I got to read a fascinating book with the students, and that was really a great way to start out the day. I wish that I could have at least a fraction of the energy that they have, because I could give up coffee forever. One quick story out of that is one of the young men there asked me if I had arrived at the meeting with in the village limousine, and I said no, the village limousine is in the garage, so I took the village helicopter. And he thought that was really cool. Just for the record, there's neither one of those things exists. They're both figments of imagination. I want to congratulate the Indian Boundary YMCA on a fabulous gala this past weekend, and particularly want to thank Celebrity Dance Studios here in Downers Grove, also one of our fine businesses, for making sure that I did not look like a complete fool when I was one of the celebrities for the Dancing Before the Stars event. And having to compete with Mrs. Illinois 2011, that was no small task. So I want to thank them very much, a chamber member and a good business here in town, and obviously the YMCA is an institution here as well. Speaking of an institution, you're thrilled that Muriel Anderson, Downers Grove's own guitar virtuoso, Muriel Anderson, will be back in Downers Grove, performing at Downers Grove North, I believe at 6 o'clock, I forget the exact time. I'm sorry, at 8 o'clock on the day after Thanksgiving at Downers Grove North, and tickets are available for that. If you've never seen Muriel Anderson perform, it's really quite extraordinary, regardless of what music you're into. I'm certainly going to do everything I can to be there. And anything I can do at Downers Grove North, I'll definitely do. I'm just making sure Commissioner Durkin's paying attention.
Great.
The Chamber of Commerce, of course, has their Beer and Beaujolais event coming up this Friday from 5 to 7. That will be over in the atrium in front of the Chamber offices. That's become a growing event, and always a lot to do in Downers Grove this time of year, isn't there? And speaking of Thanksgiving traditions, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention what has now become another institution here in Downers Grove, 8 years running, which is the Bonfield Express Foundation 5K race that starts and ends in beautiful downtown Downers Grove. And if you haven't participated in it, whether you run, walk, crawl, or walk on your hands, you should come down, because there's nothing like hanging out with about 4,000 plus of your closest friends the morning before Thanksgiving. It's really become a wonderful tradition, and I hope to see a lot of you there. And then you can just eat that much more when you get home if you've run 3.2 miles beforehand. Very quickly, as I mentioned earlier today, Commissioner Schnell and I did attend the annual Congress of Cities that the National League of Cities puts on. It was held in Phoenix last week. Always a remarkable wellspring of information and ideas to be able to get together with so many different diverse representatives of so many diverse cities from across the country, and yet we find out how many of the challenges we all have are very, very similar and common, and to talk about ideas and solutions and challenges, talk about thinking outside of the box. There's a lot of thinking outside of the box going on, and we were the recipients of some of those ideas. And I believe we've scheduled for December 6th. Which December meeting is it?
Or 13th, either
or,
one.
In December, Commissioner Schnell and I will be reporting on some of the things that we brought back from that. But I know the threads that we focused on the most in the way they organized the conference this year was green cities, so a lot of sustainability, which I know Commissioner Neustadt is a big fan of. Infrastructure, which everybody's a fan of. I kept trying to figure out how somebody else could pay for our infrastructure, but nobody wrote me a check while I was there.
But we got some ideas.
And yeah, we have some ideas. And Commissioner Schnell focused on economic development. So, Mr. Casa, you might be in trouble.
No, but we did.
I think your job's safe. And then finally, I'll just wrap up by saying, did you want to say something?
No, I wouldn't even dare after that one.
And then finally, I'll join my colleagues in wishing everyone, including my colleagues, a very safe and wonderful Thanksgiving. We have a great deal to be thankful for here in Downers Grove, and it's something that I think every year at this time we can pause and be introspective for a moment and truly appreciate what we do have to be thankful for. So I wish each and every one of you and your families a very happy Thanksgiving. And with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned. Good night.
Do you want to